Welcome to the Airlock IAM 8.5 release video. Mike and I are going to present the most notable features of the new release. The video is about the following topics. It contains chapter markers, so you can directly jump to the topics that you are most interested in. Some improvements have been made to the config automation features that have been introduced in 8.4. Let's start with short type names in YAML. In 8.4, we used fully qualified class names to identify the type of a plugin in the YAML config format. Starting with 8.5, it uses short type names as shown in this example. This makes reading and editing configuration files easier. So where can you find these short type names for each plugin? One, in the config editor in the plugin documentation of each plugin. And second, in the documentation of Airlock IAM. So if you go to docsairlock.com and choose the latest release, then you can click on the plugin link on the top right, and you will see the type name for each plugin in the header of the plugin and also in the YAML template at the end of each plugin. How to migrate to short type names. So if you have an 8.4 YAML configuration that still contains fully qualified class names, you can just use the IAM upgrade CLI for migrating configurations and snippets. As shown in this example, it will do the migration for all your configurations and your snippets. But it also warns you that there might be some manual steps, which we will see just in a minute. If you wondered what this -a usage data is, Mike is going to explain it later in this presentation. So if using type names, fully qualified type names within custom scripts, like shell scripts, Python scripts, or whatever manipulates your configuration, you will have to change them manually from fully qualified to short type names. You can use the plugin reference in the documentation to do that, or there is also a mapping file that comes with the release, which maps all old type names to the new type names. Custom code still works with fully qualified class names. Another improvement in this release is the license verification CLI. So a new command has been added to the config CLI, and it is capable of checking whether a given license covers a given configuration. It is useful for config automation pipelines, for example, to make them fail if the license doesn't cover the configuration. Some options are shown here. There are many more. Just read the usage message of the tool to see them all. YAML is now the default. What does this mean? So if you create a new instance using the init CLI command, it will automatically create an instance that has YAML on, and it also adds a YAML start configuration file. XML is still supported, so you can just call the init command using --XML, and then it will create an XML-based instance as it did before. Passkey autofill, a new feature. What is this about? Let's first look at the possibilities in older IAM versions up to 8.4 when using passkeys as a first factor, for example, to replace a password. There are two possibilities to do so. The first one is using a user identification step to identify the username, followed by a FIDO authentication step, which will first tell the user that passkey logging is going to happen, and then the actual authentication is taking place. As an alternative, the username-less FIDO authentication step could be used. These two possibilities still exist, but a new, better way to use passkeys as a first factor has been added. This is the so-called autofill feature. So how does it work? With the autofill feature, the user is directly shown available passkeys just when opening the login screen. Here, a user identification step with FIDO autofill. So the browser automatically suggests usernames. Here it's only one, John Doe, if they are available on this browser for the respective domain or origin. So the user doesn't have to type anything if there's a passkey. User can just use the passkey by, for example, placing the finger on the fingerprint reader or on the mobile, just using Face ID or something similar. This also works for the username password login screen. It's exactly the same, just here you see the alternative using username and password could be used. So let's look at the benefits of this. It clearly improves user experience, and it's better to combine this with fallback authentication factors, for example, typing a username and then using something else like email OTP. It is also combinable with password authentication. The user can just type in username and password if no key is available or if the user doesn't want to use the passkey. For this to work, it requires discoverable keys, so-called resident keys, to be available on the browser or on the mobile phone. Here are two examples of how to use this in a flow. In the first example, we use this UID and FIDO step, the autofill step, as a first step. So the user could type in the username if the user doesn't want to use a passkey. This then leads to a user identified tag, and we could, for example, add an email OTP step to authenticate the user. Alternatively, the user may choose to use the passkey, and we get a FIDO verified tag, which could be enough to authenticate the user, so the user doesn't have to interact with anything else. As a second example, we use the username, password, and FIDO step, so the autofill step, and the user may choose to enter username and password if the user doesn't want to use the passkey. So we get a password verified tag. In this example, this is okay for us to log in. And alternatively, the user may choose to use the passkey and is then also logged in, but with a FIDO verified tag. So we can still distinguish these two states in the flow and react accordingly. Some improvements have been made to Airlock 2FA and other authentication-related topics. Let's start with the Airlock 2FA enrollment code, the one without QR code, or also known as the 16-letter activation code. As you may remember from the last release video, in 8.4, we introduced the possibility to activate an Airlock 2FA device using a 16-digit activation code as shown here. So there are use cases where people don't want or they cannot use the camera app to scan a QR code. So this is a possibility to enroll an Airlock 2FA device without the camera and without QR code. So this feature has been added to 8.4 already, where we can show this activation code within the admin app. The same is now also possible within the self-service flows in the login app. So it can be part of a self-service, for example, for a self-enrollment of an additional device. And you can also use the 16-digit activation code instead of the QR code there. Additionally, it is also now possible to print the 16-digit activation code on the letters, on the activation letters. Just select the corresponding variable in your Word template and it will be printed on the ladder. So what else did we improve in the authentication area? Now it is also possible to use the Airlock 2FA passcode, a kind of OTP, in approval steps. So you can approve critical actions also with the OTP fallback solution if the push or the QR code version does not work. The same is now also possible for OATH OTP. So in public self-service flow, you can now also use this OTP to approve critical actions. And last but not least, now there is a password letter order step in authentication and self-service flows. This was so far only possible in public self-service flow. Now it's also possible in other flows of the end user. So you may put in this step to let the user order a new password letter at any place in a flow. Let's move on to one-shot authentication with flows. So for those who don't know, what is one-shot authentication in general? With Airlock Gateway and Airlock IAM, it's possible to check API calls that go through the Airlock Gateway by kind of stopping them in the gateway and then sending some information to Airlock IAM. This is typically the URL and the header. Then IAM can process this and also authorize the request to go through or to be blocked. And it can also enhance the request by adding some information for the backend. So in one-shot authentication, we authenticate every single request. IAM can process, for example, tokens in the request and exchange them for identity propagation for the backend. There are no redirects, so this is targeted at API clients. And one-shot is configured separately from flows so far. Examples to authenticate requests include frontside Kerberos, Joti tokens, auth tokens, basic auth, and single sign-on tickets. So what's new in Airlock IAM 8.5? The existing one-shot authentication solution in Airlock IAM is still available. You don't have to change anything to still use it. We're just adding a new way, a better way to use one-shot applications using Flow. So if you go into configuration to the login app and then applications and authentication, you will find a new config property group called one-shot applications. So it's in the same place where other applications are configured with flows. Let's look at an example. This screenshot shows a one-shot target application configuration example. So the one-shot target application here now has an application ID. There is a flow. You have response mappers to map flow step responses to responses sent back to the gateway. And then there is the identity propagation and username to propagate provider as usual. A flow could look like the following. In this example, we're using a HTTP basic authentication step to verify a credential, such as a password. Then a terms of services step to make sure that the latest terms of services are accepted. Here it is important to know that we're only using the non-interactive part of this step. So as soon as the step returns that there are terms of services to accept, we have to map that using the error mapper to send back a response to the client like a 400 response. Then the two abort steps, they assure that the necessary access roles are there using conditions. And also just in this example to see if an access grant on the database has been set. Last but not least, in this example, there's a scriptable step. It could be used in these examples to pre-process identity propagation data before sending it to the backend. So we can now use the full power of flows for one-shot authentication. There are many steps available that are either non-interactive or that start non-interactive. There is the whole flow infrastructure. We have scriptable steps. We have conditions and selections. You must know that not everything that was possible in the old one-shot authentication solution is already possible in the new one. Some steps are not yet available and will be added in later releases. But still, if you can use it, look at the current documentation to find out. Then you can use all the flexibility and the power of the flows in the one-shot feature. Again, as already said, the old one-shot feature is still available exactly as it is now, so you don't have to change anything if you don't want to go to flows for one-shot. Transaction approval with FIDO. How does it work and where does it make sense? Let's first set the scene to see where it makes sense. So we assume we have a transaction provider, for example, a bank, with a web server, for example, serving the digital banking platform. The end user is using the digital banking platform in a browser, and we assume there's Airlock IAM, and the user uses a FIDO key to log in. So the user has sometimes, in the past, it has registered the FIDO key for login with Airlock IAM. To have a transaction approved by the user using FIDO, the web server sends the transaction details to Airlock IAM to the transaction approval interface and gets back a FIDO challenge. The web server then sends the transaction details together with the FIDO challenge to the web browser of the user. If the user approves the transaction, the FIDO challenge is sent to the FIDO key, which signs it, and it sends back the FIDO signature via the web server to Airlock IAM. Airlock IAM can then verify the signature, log data, and send back the response to the web server, whether the transaction was approved by the user or not. Let's look at the details. The transaction information is also hashed into the FIDO challenge, so it is also signed and verifiable later. The transaction details, they are displayed outside of the FIDO protocol, so this is not strictly what you see as what you sign. But on the other hand, the communication channel is phishing protected because of the FIDO protocols, which gives you additional security. It is important to see that the quality of the authenticator, that is the key used or the key device used, is crucial, and it must be verifiable by Airlock IAM. At the moment, this is only possible by FIDO authenticators providing signed attestations. IAM can log enough data in a way that signatures are verifiable in retrospect by just looking at the log file and by using the user's authenticator's public key. Read the documentation, go to the latest IAM documentation, to the transaction approval, within that to the REST API chapter, and look at transaction approval with FIDO2 for more information. So what can be achieved with this feature? You can use registered FIDO keys for transaction approval. The guarantees you get, they depend on the verifiability of the key quality. It is important to know that without verifying the key quality using signed assertions, there is no guarantee that the used key can really keep the secret key private. It uses standard state-of-the-art crypto of the FIDO protocols. It offers phishing protection, but there's no strict what you see is what you sign, or also called payer awareness. There is no separate channel as used with other transaction approval methods. And it is not to be confused with the new upcoming standard called Secure Payment Confirmation, This standard is still draft, and there is poor browser support for it, and we'll support that when it's ready. Again, read the docs. There's some more important information in there.
Hello, also from my side. I'm going to talk about OpenID Connect, and as you probably already expected, also this release will have a few improvements in the OpenID Connect area. It's going to be backchannel logout, token exchange, and B-Link integration that profit from some improvements. Backchannel logout is the feature where the OpenID provider or the authorization server notifies clients that the user requested a logout. In the past, we had two behaviors. One was called all and the other one was called none. All just removed all the tokens, and you had to find out as a client about the token being removed by checking the revocation status of the token. With none, the OP didn't do anything at all, so therefore there was no way the client could find out that the user requested a logout. Now, we've improved that. The standard says there should be a logout behavior, and we call it session, where the OP selects the session that the current user has authenticated, meaning that all the clients, the different clients that from the same user authenticated session have received access and refresh tokens are selected, and the OpenID provider then informs all these clients that a logout has been requested by the user and expect them to honor that logout request. This only works for static clients. DCR registered clients are left out. They cannot profit from the logout session behavior. Another area where we've improved is token exchange. Just to remind you, token exchange is the separate server in the OAuth OpenID Connect environment where you can come in with a set of tokens and replace them with a different token. This is useful when you go from one security zone to another, where you bring token from one security zone and exchange it to a token from a different security zone, or maybe you have an external token, Microsoft Entra ID, and you want to change it into an internal token. Now, the flexibility of the configuration was a little bit lacking because the subject token validation was configured generally and was applicable to all the exchange rules. We've changed that. We've taken the subject token validation configuration and added it into the rule itself so that now, and this is the screenshot that I've brought with me, you see that subject token validation is basically also covered by the condition. So if you have different conditions with different exchange sets or exchange rule sets, then the subject token validation is a part of that, and you can have different subject token validation depending on what the requested resource or the audience condition is that you're going to supply or fulfill with this particular exchange. This should make things a little bit more easy to configure, especially in complex environments, and remove the need for having different token exchange servers for such situations. We hope that will help you be a little more flexible in this area. The last topic I'm going to cover is B-Link integration. When we've implemented client identifier logic, we looked at the RFC, the 6749, and the RFC is very clear. It says the authorization server issues to register the client a client identifier. So the authorization server is in the driver's seat. Then came B-Link, and B-Link is getting more and more important. So we see a lot of customers adopting B-Link, and B-Link, they came with the idea of a central directory where all the connected authorization servers basically can get their client information. And of course, that directly contradicts the RFC. But it's a good idea and it's a convenient idea. And so we made IAM a little bit more flexible. So during dynamic client registration, you can now supply the client ID. It will be extracted if you configure it that way, direct from the DCR request, and it will be used as the client identifier. We hope that this will help make B-Link integrations a little bit more seamless and remove cumbersome manual operations to get B-Link clients into an Airlock IAM. So that was it for OpenID Connect. Let's talk about usage analytics. We've introduced this feature already with IAM 8.4, but now with IAM 8.4, we are making it mandatory, and that warrants a few words about it. The goal is to collect analytics information about how our products are used by you, our customers, to improve product decisions. So we basically want to better understand how you're using our product to make improvements and changes to a product that will actually serve you better. Usage analytics is something that requires explicit contents of the content of the customer because we're making data collection, we're sending data back, and we're not going to do that without your consent. The way we do it is that IAM prepares the information, encrypts it, and then through the administrator that's logged into the admin app, this will then upload it to the Azure cloud. Just to make it totally clear, it's license analytics that are mandatory with IAM 8.5 and license analytics and usage analytics. Let me quickly explain what the difference is. It's basically the data. License data is mandatory, usage data is not. And license data only includes the license, the IAM version, the number of users in the database, the deployment form, be that a Docker container or a self-contained application, and the configuration of the usage analytics feature. So if you have enabled usage data or not. The content with usage data currently is the redacted configuration. And I have to explain the term redacted. Redacted means that we're basically removing all the information that could reveal details about the system or the system infrastructure, the network, or the customer. So we're basically removing secrets, plugin names, host names, and so forth. So license data is not redacted because there is no need to redact it. There is nothing that would actually go beyond or would reveal anything about your systems, but usage data, of course, is redacted. Before we upload it to the Airlock Cloud Service, both are encrypted with a key that is only known to us, everyone. So nobody can exfiltrate the data while it's in transit. We've updated our configuration templates. As you can see, most of them support usage analytics. The minimal start configuration just supports license analytics. You would need to change that manually if you wanted to supply us with usage analytics data. So this is how you can get a new configuration started. But you're probably more interested in seeing how your current configurations get into the new IAM 8.5. And of course, we're supporting you with that. The IAM CLI supports automatically configuring the plugin during init, upgrade, and reset operations. And how that works is very simple. Number one is you can use in the command line option. With -A or -- analytics, you get a license data or usage data parameter that you can supply, and this will lead to something like bin IAM init -A usage data -C config demo config, which means that I'm just initializing a new configuration in a directory demo config, and yes, the usage and analytics plugin will provide us with usage data. The same can be achieved with an environment variable. The environment variable is called IAM Analytics Mode, and the values are the same. So if you first set that environment variable, then you can run any number of commands bin IAM, and it will just take your decision from the environment variable. Very important, if the plugin's already in the configuration, you need to neither set the command line option nor the environment variable because the plugin's already there. Then you already had made your decision and no further action is required. Self-sovereign identities is the base technology that the EID is going to use. And at the time of the recording, the decision on the vote about the EID in Switzerland has not yet been taken. So I'm just making this presentation as if we had won the EID vote. And in 2026, everybody will have the chance to get their own EID. But at Airlock, we've taken the opportunity and we've already implemented the technology into our product. And instead of showing you a few slides about it, I'm going to make a little demonstration of this particular feature. What I'm going to demonstrate is a simple onboarding process where we're first reading the eID from the SWIO wallet. So like in real life, we're taking the picture from the SWIO wallet or from the eID, and we're presenting the picture to Pixel Vision and asking for a liveness check. So we're verifying that the face in front of the camera and the face from the eID is the same. Then to make the legal guys happy, we're showing the terms of services, and we're issuing into the Procivis wallet a credential that will allow us to log in, because that's the next flow that I'm going to show, is that we're going to extract the same credential again from the Procivis wallet. At this time, we're using it to authenticate and logging in a user. So enough introduction, let's go to the demo. What we're seeing here is on the left-hand side, a browser window. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's a little bit more easily readable. So, and on the right-hand side, you're seeing my mobile phone. My mobile phone has two wallet applications installed, the SWIO wallet application and the Procivis wallet application. Why did I do that? Well, everything would work with the SWIO wallet, but there is the limitation that the eID only works with the SWIO wallet. And since I've been asked several times if it's possible to have different wallets, yes, it's possible, just not with the eID, but a login credential, as I'm going to issue today, is easily stored also in a different wallet. So, the first thing we need to do is, I don't have an account yet, I want to sign up. And the first step in the signing up is, of course, that it's going to ask me to share my identity from the eID. Which I'm doing, I'm scanning the QR code using the SWIO wallet. The SWIO wallet now shows me that I have two beta IDs. I'm going to use the second one. As you can see in here is my name, first name, date of birth. These are the details that Airlock IAM is asking me not to share. And of course, I'm allowing that. It's confirming that I've shared this successfully. The SWIO wallet is rather talkative. Now, Airlock IAM has received the information. So we're seeing last name, first name, date of birth, and of course the picture have been added to IAM. Now, IAM is using this picture and connecting to the Pixel Vision service. And here's the QR code that will allow me to go and now prove my identity in a liveness check. So I'm starting the liveness check here. As you can see, I have a bit of experience. So let's see on whether that was successful. Oh yes, I'm good at creating selfie videos. I've tested it quite a few times. It gives you experience, and the identity is verified. So we're accepting this. And as I've already told you, keeping the legal guys happy, terms of service, of course, we're accepting those as well. And now we're switching again back to the mobile phone, because here is a QR code for a credential that is going to be issued by IAM. And I want to scan the QR code because I'm going to accept this credential. And you can see it has first name, last name, user ID in there. The credential was issued, and now I can look into it and see, yes, Michael Dujak, and this user ID. The user ID is automatically generated as a UUID by Airlock IAM and stored in the database. And this is the item or the claim from the credential that I'm going to use now during the sign-in. For the sign-in, we have a special button here, the SSI login button. Again, a QR code being presented. I scan this. Yes, I'm willing to share my user ID. And bang, I'm logged in. So much for the demonstration. That was it for the eID demo. What have you seen? Well, you've seen the SSI feature set that Airlock IAM now supports, and it's compatible with the eID public beta infrastructure and also the EUDI wallet infrastructure in Europe. And what we have is we have an SSI authentication step. I didn't show that. I directly went to passwordless SSI authentication since I have the user ID in the credential. Then I did an SSI issuance at the end of the registration process, if you remember, and I did a verification at the very beginning of the registration process when I obtained the data from the EID. So that's it for SSI. If you're interested in this particular feature and want to implement something yourself, please get in contact with us. There's a few requirements on cloud services being available to you, and those are not publicly accessible. So get in contact with us, and we'll support you in getting your own pilot up and running.
In this chapter, we present a few more features that are notable for Airlock IAM 8.5. You can now react to events like password change or account lock by terminating all active user sessions. This can also be done in a way that the originating user session, the one that triggered the event, is not affected. The AD password reset fix prevents that the user has to change the password again after a password reset. The SAML logout propagation behavior and configuration has been improved. So there are now more config options, and there has also been a bug fix in that area. Airlock IAM now prevents the blast radius attack, both as a radius server and a radius client. As always, look at the changelog for more security improvements. We have improved the API performance, the REST API performance, and thus also the web application performance by allowing parallel read operations on a session. The new SMS and email value provider allow you to use a user's mobile phone numbers and email addresses in event subscribers. There are new password-related events. One is emitted if a password letter is ordered, and the other is emitted if a password reset is performed. The new device condition allows you to distinguish new devices from already used devices in flows. It is now easier to renew SAML certificates because we now allow multiple certificates for verifying SAML signatures in the configuration. The user sync task has been made more flexible by adding more data transformers. As always, there are more features which you can find in the changelog.
We have improved the IAM REST API documentation. And instead of showing here a screenshot, I'll just show you the documentation live to present a few of the features that I think are most noteworthy. Number one is we've integrated all the documentations into single view, so you can just switch back and forth between transaction approval, admin up, and login up, and see all the REST APIs in one place. The navigation, especially of the intro chapters, is much more simple than it was in the past. And down here is where the actual REST API documentation is. You can see that in the middle you have an explanation, what it actually is. You have the request, test request prepared, and you have the different responses that you can click through. There is a search feature that actually works quite a bit better than the old did in the Meyerdot documentation. So all in all, the new REST API documentation is, in our opinion, a huge step forward. It has as a base an improved Open API specification. I already talked to you about all the features that it has. And last but not least, since it's an improved Open API specification, all the documentation is already integrated in the Open API specification, and you're free to choose which tool you want to use. If you don't like ours, you don't have to use it. You can use your preferred tools yourself.
Let's close this video with some general release information. Airlock IAM is a minor release, which means it's non-breaking. There are no manual steps necessary if you are using existing features. There is no database schema upgrade for this release. But if you're using Oracle, have a look at the new cache size default and decide whether you want to apply it or not. The release notes are, as always, in the documentation. Go to docs.airlock.com/IAM/latest and then navigate to the release notes chapter. The How to Upgrade chapter can also be found in the same documentation under Installation and Upgrade. The release will be supported until end of June 2027. It's a long-term supported minor release, and the documentation for this very release can be found at docs.airlock.com/IAM/8.5. Have a look at the Academy if you are interested in any Academy trainings. Here are some of the end support dates for the latest releases. The next release, which will probably be called 8.6, but we call it 2026 Spring until we know what its name is, planned for end of March or beginning of April next year. Thank you for watching this video and have fun with the new release.